In this video, we introduce the forms and the functions of the Koine Greek demonstratives. So here on this title slide, I say demonstrative pronouns and adjectives because demonstratives in Greek can be used either as a pronoun or as an adjective. And we'll get to those uses in just a second. But the sort of catch-all category for what we're talking about, or the catch-all term for what we are talking about in this video, is demonstratives. So if you remember back to pronouns, our introduction to pronouns, we talked about these different aspects of pronouns. That a pronoun is a word that stands for another word that has come previously in a discourse, whether that be in the sentence or earlier in the paragraph. And the word to which the pronoun refers is called its antecedent. And a pronoun is going to match its antecedent in gender and in number in Greek all the time. So we're always going to have the gender and the number of a pronoun matching back to what it's referring back to earlier in the context. And we noted that there's different kinds of pronouns. We've introduced these ones, personal pronouns, and we'll get to these ones later on in the semester. But in this video, we are talking about demonstrative pronouns. And so demonstratives, again, have two different functions. They can be adjectives or they can be pronouns. So as a pronoun, they fit under the category of pronoun, of course. And then lastly here, just as by way of reminder, personal pronouns in Greek in the genitive case are the most common way to show possession. And so on demonstratives in particular, so we have two different kinds of demonstratives. The nearer demonstrative, which is closer to the speaker or the writer and means this or these, and then the farther demonstrative, which is farther away either in physical proximity or mentally, that or those. So you can think of this as pointing to this and that as pointing away to that. And this is where we get the names nearer and farther. So in English and in Greek, demonstratives function very similarly to one another. We may not remember, of course, the grammar of English demonstrative pronouns, and we may not even be familiar with the English term demonstrative, but we should be able to sort of recognize how English uses demonstratives in a way that is similar to what Greek does. So English and Greek can both use a demonstrative either as a pronoun or as an adjective modifying another noun or describing another noun. So here, this first part, I give you the pronoun use of the demonstrative in English and in Greek. That is mine. So that is the pronoun. It's the noun itself. It's the object of the verb here. And in Greek, because when a demonstrative is functioning as a pronoun, it's functioning as a noun in a sentence. It can have different grammatical functions. When that is the case, when a demonstrative is a pronoun, its Greek case will be dependent on what the word is doing in the sentence. That is its grammatical function. So it will change cases based on whether it's the subject, the object, the indirect object, or a describing word in the sentence. But it will never change its gender and number. It will always match its antecedent in gender and in number. So here I give you a Greek example. Genosko ton anthropon. I know the human. Ekenos esten agathos. That one. This is our farther demonstrative, and if you look at this os ending, because you know your noun endings so well, you probably can guess, even though you haven't seen the forms of the demonstrative yet, that this is what case? Yes, absolutely correct. This is in the nominative case, even though it's referring back to the man or the human, which is in the accusative case here. It's changed to the nominative case because it's the subject of the to-be verb esten. That one is good. So when a demonstrative is being used as a pronoun, its case will change on the basis of its function in a sentence, but it will match its antecedent in gender and in number. So this is masculine singular, just like anthropon is masculine singular, though their cases differ from one another. And then when a Greek demonstrative is an adjective, it's going to match the noun that it's modifying in case. So in case, gender, and in number. So all three will match up. There won't be a difference of case because the demonstrative adjective is going very closely with the noun that it's modifying. So another example here that's sort of similar to the one I just gave. Gnosko, ekeinon, ton, agathon, anthropon. So the object of our sentence is this whole phrase here from ekeinon to the end, and this part should be very familiar to you. The good person. So here we have an adjective in attributive position with the article directly before it, modifying anthropon. So notice how agathon matches anthropon in case, gender, and number because it's an adjective directly modifying this. Ekeinon is being used as an adjective also in this case. And so it is also going to match anthropon and thus also agathon. So we here have an accusative masculine singular. I know that good person. So the that here is an adjective telling us more information about the good person. Which good person it is, that one over there. And so now with this sort of newfound knowledge, this descriptive knowledge of English and Greek demonstratives, I want to give us a little bit of practice here. So look at this sentence here, this English sentence, and pause the lecture. Should only take you a handful of seconds, and see if you can identify the English demonstratives in it. And then once you have done that, once you have identified the English demonstratives, and I'll give you the hint that there are two of them, state whether they are pronouns or adjectives. So here are our demonstratives. This is Aaron Rodgers. He will throw that ball to Davante Adams. So in the case of the first one, we have a pronoun. It is being used as a noun in the sentence. This is. So the subject of the sentence of the verb is, with Aaron Rodgers as what is called the predicate. And then that ball is a demonstrative adjective. It's telling us more information about which ball. So let's take this a step further with our descriptive language that we have been introduced to in this video and determine which demonstrative is nearer and which demonstrative is farther. The first one is our nearer demonstrative, this, whereas that ball is the farther demonstrative. And one more thing for you to do on this slide, this one might take you a little bit more time than the other pauses have here. Pause the lecture and think about what case this would be in Greek and what case that would be in Greek. So in the case of this, we would have the nominative as the subject of the to be verb is, and then that would be in the accusative case as the object of throwing. So if we were to mark our sentences, it would be something like this. So that this is Aaron Rodgers, and Aaron Rodgers we might also put in a square because it's the predicate, which would be in the nominative case in Greek. And this is the subject, which would certainly be in the nominative case in Greek. He, in the next sentence, is the subject of will throw. That ball is the object. To Davante Adams is the indirect object, which would be in the dative. So this, that would be in the accusative case, and this would be in the nominative case. And so here we have our forms of the nearer demonstrative, and on the next slide I will give you the forms of the farther demonstrative, but I want to make a couple comments on these forms. So first is notice the rough breathing marks, particularly on haute and hautai. And you should note those because they look like the third person personal pronouns aute and autai. But these are different words, whereas this is going to mean she and they. This is going to mean this and these. This referring to something feminine in grammatical gender, and these that's something feminine plural in grammatical gender. And then also notice how the root changes between toot and tout. So if the ending has an omicron or omega, so an O sound in it, we're going to have toot being the root. Whereas if the ending has the vowel sound A or the alpha or the eta, we're going to have tout. And so that's just worth noting that we have two different roots here. And for the most part, toot is associated with the masculine and the neuter, with the exception of the neuter nominative and accusative plural. And tout is generally speaking associated with the feminine, with the exception of two-tone, because we have the same word throughout the genitive plural here. And then to give you the paradigm here of the farther demonstrative, which as to its endings is going to look exactly the same as the paradigm of the nearer demonstrative. And both the nearer and the farther demonstrative, their endings line up with our mnemonic for the second and first declension respectively. And I realize that this is all very small right here. I'm going to, on the next slide, zoom in a little bit for us. But we have swain ionesus in our nearer demonstrative and in our farther demonstrative here. So that we have the sigma, the hupsilon, the iota underneath the long omega vowel, the nu in the accusative, the iota of the nominative plural, the on of the genitive plural, the is of the dative plural, and the us of the accusative. And then the same thing over here, minus the alpha of the nominative because it's an eta instead, and minus what would be the alpha of the vocative in a normal noun, or in a just a regular noun, as it were. And so to give you a little bit closer up of this here, you can see it more clearly. Swain ion is us, and sin a, which would be there but is not, ion is us. And then, as always, the neuter, nominative, and accusative are identical to one another in both the singular and the plural, and they differ from the masculine, though the genitive and the dative are going to be identical to the masculine. So remember, that's always going to be the case with the neuter over here. And then again, to just show you in a little bit more close-up format here, that our farther demonstrative, swain ionesus, the endings here match up with our mnemonic of the most interesting man in the world, and our mnemonic for Xena. And another note of comparison here, our definite article paradigm, which you have memorized and I know you still know so well, is very similar to the endings on the demonstratives as well. So notice that the exceptions are usually in the nominative here. So the ha and the os ending look a little bit different. But otherwise, you see we have tu, just like tu up here, toe, just like toe up here, ton, just like ton up here, oi, just like hoi up here, tone, tone, tois, tois, tus, tus. And then the same thing throughout here. And then over here as well, the same thing, particularly noting the ta, the ta, the ta, and the ta here. And this is the reason that you are not asked to memorize the nearer and farther demonstrative pronouns, because you should be able to recognize their endings based on the memorization you have already done of this definite article paradigm. So I remember back when we were learning the definite article, I told you that it's somewhat of a pain that you have to memorize these 24 forms of the definite article, and that Greek has 24 different forms, but your memorization of that sort of continues to pay dividends. So if you feel like you still don't have this definite article paradigm memorized well, I would encourage you this week to work on that. And even if you do have it memorized well, it might behoove you to, on your whiteboard, just write out the definite article paradigm a handful of times, because it serves as the basis for what's going on here, which you will be asked not to reproduce on the quizzes for the week, but to recognize forms from. And then the same thing is also going to be true on our next slide with the farther demonstrative, that the endings here are going to look very similar to the endings of the definite article, though in the case of the farther demonstrative, we don't have that tau in there as we do with the nearer demonstrative. And then lastly, before we get a little bit of practice here, the uses of the demonstrative. So we're going to have 3 different uses of the demonstratives, one as an adjective. So the demonstrative adjective is going to agree with the noun it's modifying in case, in gender, and in number, and it is always going to be in predicate position. That is to say, the demonstrative will not have the article before it. Rather, the article will oftentimes be before the noun itself. So, I see this man. So notice how there is no article before Teuton here. The article comes after Teuton before the noun. So this is in predicate position. And then our substantive standing for another noun. So this is a pronoun usage of the demonstrative. And in this case, the demonstrative pronoun does not strictly refer to an antecedent. It's a case where someone has not been introduced yet, or it's not referring back to someone else, but it's referring to someone who is sort of new into the discourse and stands on its own. So, houtos estin ha anthropos, this is the man. The this in this case has not been mentioned earlier in the narrative or the discourse. And then the substantive referring to an antecedent is a case where the demonstrative pronoun does refer to someone that has already, or something that has already been mentioned in the previous context. And it's going to match that antecedent in gender and in number, and its case is going to be dependent on its function in the sentence. So it can change its case based on what it is doing in the sentence. So the example here, blepo ton anthropon, I see the human, ekainos estin agathos. That one is good. The ekainos here refers to anthropon. Anthropon is its antecedent, and it's changed its case into the nominative from the accusative here because it's the subject of the verb estin. So what we're going to do now is test out our skills on some Greek sentences here. So I'm going to give us 2 different sentences, and as always, there's going to be some scaffolding about the information I give you so that if you sort of don't get it or you can't recognize it right away, I encourage you not to go and look up answers or not to go back and look at material, but that will sort of slowly be unveiled for you when I give you more information here. So we're going to read our first sentence, and then I'm going to ask you to see if you can identify the 2 demonstratives in the sentence and the uses of them. So we have houtos estin, anthropos tu kosmou, kai ekthros tu theou. Ekainos de estin, philos tu theou. So see if you can figure out what the 2 demonstratives are and the uses of those demonstratives. And I give us an English translation here. This might help you a little bit. If you couldn't get some of this information before, see what this does for you. And now our demonstratives highlighted in yellow in English. And then the full information here of the uses of the demonstrative right here and our different forms, the nearer demonstrative and the farther demonstrative down here. So what you should have found is that houtos is our nearer demonstrative. Ekainos is our further demonstrative. So this is our identification of the 2 demonstratives. And this first one is going to be used as a pronoun. It's the noun, the subject of the verb estin. So this one is. So we would say that it is a substantive. In this case, probably a substantive standing for a noun because we don't know what comes before. Maybe someone was mentioned that this one is, and in that case it would be this one here, substance is referring to an antecedent. But because we don't have anything previously, we're going to go with this one in this case. And then down here, we have the same thing. Probably a substantive standing for a noun, since we don't have anything that comes before this that this would be referring to. It's probably standing on its own, not referring to an antecedent. But if we were to have something in the discourse that comes before it that identified a figure or a person, then it would be this one, referring to an antecedent here. And so we have our translation here, we have our demonstrative, and now we have our uses. Let's go ahead and do one more here. I'm going to read it for us. In akenis, tais, hemerais, amen, in to auto agro, soon tois, technois, kai, a didaskamen, akena. So see if you can identify the demonstratives in the sentence. This time I don't tell you how many there are, and name the uses of these demonstratives. And we're going to do it a little bit differently this time. Rather than give you the translation first, I'm going to give you the paradigms and the uses here and see what you can do with these given this information. And now our translation. In those days, we were in the field with the children and we were teaching those ones. That is the children. See if that translation helps you with these anymore. And so what we have here is akenis and akena, both being farther demonstratives. In the first case, notice that it's going with the feminine dative noun hemerais, the days. So in those days, so in this case, it's an adjective modifying a noun. It's in predicate position, no definite article before it. And this one, akena, is going to be a substantive referring to an antecedent here. So in the case of akena, our parsing information is going to be neuter, accusative, plural. And this neuter accusative plural, it's the object of the verb we were teaching. We were teaching those ones. And so as a neuter accusative plural and as a substantive referring to an antecedent, it's going to match its antecedent in gender and in number. So if we look back in this sentence to find something that is going to be neuter and plural, our option here is, or our antecedent here is going to be tois, technois. Remember, technon in the singular is a neuter noun. So as a vocabulary, in our vocabulary list, it would be written like this: technon, ta. Remember this ta, the definite article, telling us that technon is a neuter noun. And in this case, dative, neuter, plural. So neuter plural, our demonstrative matches back with the neuter plural here, though they're in different cases, because after soon we have tois in the dative, because soon the preposition takes a dative, whereas over here we have it in the accusative case because it is functioning as the object of the verb here. So again, our demonstratives in the sentence are akenis and akena, and you may have been confused with this one slightly. This one is a pronoun, and notice here that this is a pronoun that means same, in the same field. And sorry, I actually did not put that into our translation here. So remember, when a third person personal pronoun, the pronoun autos, is in this position, in attributive position, it's going to mean same, the same field. So to put it all together, translation all together, in those days we were in the same field with the children and we were teaching them.